Burn it, she said, handing me the plate with the raw burger like I was the help. So I did. I stood there at the grill, letting the meat blacken, watching grease hiss and bubble like it was trying to escape, like I was. Behind me, her family buzzed like flies at a picnic, talking over each other, laughing too loudly at jokes that weren't funny, and sipping wine like it made them better people. It was the kind of barbecue where everyone smiles with teeth, but their eyes are scanning for someone to gossip about the moment they turn around. I never turned around. The only reason I knew they were laughing at me was because I felt it. You know, that invisible tug at your spine, like your soul's being mocked in real time? That. Then her sister, Tasha, the blonde with too many opinions and not enough empathy, shouted over the music. If you disappeared tomorrow, lol, no one would even notice. Laughter. Mallory, my wife, laughed the loudest. She clapped her hands like a child at a magic show, looked right at me with those eyes that used to mean something, and doubled over. Still holding the tongs, I stared at the fire. One of the burger patties had slipped through the grate and was sizzling uselessly on the coals. Without turning around, I lifted my hot dog like a toast. Challenge accepted. No one even heard me. That night, while they passed around fireworks and cheap champagne, I packed a bag. 1 pair of jeans, 2 shirts, my grandfather's watch, and the silence. I didn't leave a note. I didn't slam the door. I just stopped existing. That was exactly 1 year ago today. And this morning, Mallory showed up at the cabin door, barefoot, crying, holding a box. Inside the box, something that didn't belong to either of us. And that's when I realized they weren't laughing anymore. She didn't knock. She just stood there on the porch, eyes swollen, hair matted like she hadn't slept in days or weeks. Her bare feet were red from the gravel, and her fingers clenched a cardboard box like it was the only thing keeping her upright. We stared at each other through the screen door, neither of us speaking. I hadn't seen her in 365 days. I counted every one of them. For a second, I thought maybe I was still dreaming. Maybe this was just another one of those nightmares where I saw her again and woke up drenched in sweat, alone. But then she whispered my name, Lowell, like it hurt to say it. Like it was something she hadn't allowed herself to say in a long time. I didn't invite her in. She stepped in anyway. The box landed on my kitchen table with a soft thud. Duct tape along the edges, smudged fingerprints on top, and one word written in messy black marker across the lid. Don't. I didn't ask questions. I just stared. You weren't supposed to leave like that, she said, her voice hoarse. You could have just said something. Said something? I almost laughed. Like, hey, sorry I've become the family clown you pass around for amusement between courses? She flinched. Good. I looked for you, she whispered. No, I said. You didn't. And neither did your precious family. You all laughed. That was the last sound I heard before I disappeared. Laughter. Her lips trembled. She opened the box slowly, like it was ticking. Inside wasn't what I expected. Not a letter. Not a photo. Not some symbolic memento meant to pull my heartstrings. It was a phone. My old one. The same one I'd smashed and tossed into the river the night I left. I reached out, touched it. Cold. Real. I looked at her. Where did you get this? She didn't answer. Just sat down. Pale. Trembling. The phone buzzed. Yes, it buzzed. No charger. No network. It lit up on its own. One notification. One new voicemail. No number. Just unknown. 12:03 a.m. I pressed play. And then I heard it. Not a voice. Not breathing. But the sound of me. Crying. Sobbing. Begging someone to stop. And in the background, laughter. Familiar laughter. Tasha. Mallory. And someone else. A man. A voice I'd never heard before. Until that moment. I didn't remember recording anything. That was the first thing that rattled me. I hadn't cried like that in years. Not since the night after my dad's funeral. But this wasn't grief. It was something else entirely. Something raw. Something panicked. I stood frozen while the sound of my own voice echoed through the cabin like some kind of ghost I had forgotten how to carry. And behind it, those laughs again. The exact same cadence from the barbecue. Tasha's piercing cackle. Mallory's signature snort when she thinks she's being clever. And then the male voice. Deep. Calm. Too calm. Like he was enjoying it. The sound cut out before I could make out any words, but the tone was enough. It wasn't random. It wasn't innocent. It was planned. Staged. And somehow, they had me, sobbing like a child, on tape. I looked up at Mallory. She was gripping the edge of the table, knuckles white, staring down at the box like it might bite her. You gonna explain? I asked. My voice cracked. I didn't want it to. I wanted to sound strong, composed, like I hadn't spent the last year dissolving piece by piece in this self-imposed exile. But my throat betrayed me. I didn't know he was recording, she said softly. He? I asked. Who the hell is he? She swallowed hard. His name's Everett. He was a friend of Tasha's. Kind of. I don't even know anymore. I didn't invite him to the barbecue. He just showed up. And then he didn't leave. For months. I stared at her like she was speaking in code. He lived with you? She nodded. Not like that. He was just around. And I couldn't get rid of him. Tasha said he was harmless. She thought it was funny. I backed away from the table like the phone might explode. You're telling me that for an entire year, some guy named Everett was living in my house, laughing about the fact that I vanished, and somehow he had my old phone? Mallory didn't answer. She looked ashamed. And afraid. Not of me, no. She was terrified of the box. I didn't want to ask the next question. I didn't want to know. But I had to. Is this the only message? Her silence was all the answer I needed. I reached into the box again. Under the phone, wrapped in an old hoodie of mine that smelled like mold and gasoline, was a tiny black flash drive. Mallory didn't stop me. When I plugged it into my laptop, it didn't autoplay. It didn't even have folders. Just one file. No title. No metadata. Just a single corrupted video, 34 seconds long. It showed my old bedroom. Our bedroom. The floral wallpaper. The mirror above the dresser she insisted we keep, even though it was cracked. And the bed. I was in it. Sleeping. The timestamp said it was recorded at 3:11 a.m. The night I disappeared. Except, I left at 1:44. I remember that. I was already gone. So who the hell was lying in my place? I must have watched that 34-second clip 20 times. My cursor hovered over the play button like I could squeeze some hidden truth out of it if I stared long enough. But no matter how many times I hit replay, it never changed. There I was, lying on our bed, shirtless, blanket half pulled over me, the same way I always used to sleep when the house was warm. My right hand curled under the pillow, my leg hanging off the side. Exactly how I used to sleep. Exactly how only I would know to sleep. Mallory stood across the room in the video. She wasn't holding the camera. Her arms were at her sides, her face pale and blank like she was watching a stranger get undressed in her house. The person holding the camera said nothing, just breathed. Slow, deliberate, steady, like they had all the time in the world. At the 27-second mark, the angle shifted slightly, and I saw my own face on the screen. Eyes closed, completely still. But it wasn't me. It wasn't me. Because I had already left the house by then. I had been halfway across town, driving with shaking hands and a dry throat, watching headlights blur through tears I refused to acknowledge. So whoever that was in the bed, it was a copy, a mold, a setup, or, you drugged me, I said, not looking at her. Mallory shook her head frantically. No, Lowell, I swear. I didn't know. I didn't know they were doing that. I didn't even know that video existed until Everett sent it to me last week. I thought you were really gone. I thought you left because of me. I turned toward her. You thought I left because of you? You mean after you laughed while your sister humiliated me in front of your whole family? Or after a stranger started squatting in my home, and you just let him? Her lip trembled, but I didn't care. I needed her to feel it. I needed someone to feel something other than laughter. You didn't leave a note, she whispered. You didn't call. You vanished, Lowell. That broke something in me too. No, I said. Don't make this about you. You didn't look for me. You moved on. You laughed. And now you're here, with a haunted phone, a box of half-truths, and a tape that proves someone impersonated me in my own bed. I want the truth. I don't know all of it, she admitted, stepping back. But you're right. Something happened that night. Something I haven't told anyone. Her hand reached into her pocket and pulled out a crumpled napkin. I found this under your pillow 2 days after you left. I didn't show it to anyone. Not even Tasha. She handed it to me. I unfolded it slowly, heart pounding like a drum in my ears. One line was scrawled across it in messy handwriting. We took the wrong one. Watch your mirrors. That was when I noticed something in the cabin mirror behind Mallory's shoulder. A figure, standing still, not moving, and not reflecting her at all. I didn't move at first. I didn't blink. I just stared at the mirror behind her, because I knew what I saw. There was something standing in the corner, right next to the coat rack. I don't even have a coat rack. But there it was, casting no shadow, reflecting nothing, not matching the angle of anything else in the room. Mallory stood directly in front of it, and yet, in the mirror, it wasn't behind her. It was behind me. But when I turned to look, nothing. Empty corner. No coat rack. No figure. Just dust, worn floorboards, and the ticking sound of a clock I hadn't noticed before, one I didn't own. It sat on the wall above the door now. A rusted, brass-edged antique that hadn't been there this morning. I backed away from the mirror and sat down at the table again, trying to get control of my breathing, which had started to go shallow and uneven. "I need you to leave," I said finally. Mallory looked at me like I'd slapped her. "Lowell," I said, "leave. This was a mistake. You showing up, that box, the phone, this is all some game. Some trap." "It's not a game," she said, taking a desperate step forward. "You think I'm not scared? I didn't come here to ask you to come back. I came here because I don't know where else to go." "And what, exactly," I snapped, "do you think I'm supposed to do about it?" She hesitated. Then she said something I will never forget. "I think Everett wanted you to see that message." My mouth went dry. "Why?" "Because you were never supposed to leave. He said if you disappeared, the experiment would collapse. He said you were the variable that had to stay observed. That's the word he used. Observed. Like you were some lab rat he was tracking." I stood up so fast my chair tipped over behind me. "What do you mean experiment?" Mallory was crying now. She reached into her coat and pulled out another object, one I instantly recognized. My old key fob. The one to the storage unit I hadn't visited since before the barbecue. I never even mentioned it to her. "Everett had this," she whispered. "Said it was time for you to remember what you stored away." I grabbed it out of her hand and shoved her toward the door. "I don't know what sick joke this is," I said, trembling. "But you need to go. Now. Before I stop being polite." She didn't argue. She didn't even grab her coat. As soon as she stepped outside, I slammed the door and locked it, pressing my forehead against the wood. I stayed there for a while, until I couldn't hear her footsteps anymore. Then I turned slowly, and in the mirror by the window, there were two of me, one standing exactly where I was, and the other slightly behind, smiling. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even sit down. Every mirror in the cabin got turned to the wall, covered in towels, bed sheets, jackets, anything I could find. Even the toaster went out the window. I couldn't bear the thought of catching another glimpse. That smile, it wasn't mine. It wore my face, but it wasn't me. It was something pretending to be Lowell, something that enjoyed the fact I was finally unraveling. Around 4:20 a.m., I caved. I took the key fob Mallory had brought and got in my truck. I drove through fog so thick I couldn't see the end of my headlights. The air felt heavier than usual, like the road didn't want me going anywhere. Like something had followed me and was now clinging to the back of the truck bed, silent and waiting. The storage unit was 27 miles outside town, in one of those half-abandoned industrial parks with more pigeons than security cameras. I hadn't been back since before everything, before the barbecue, before the laughter, before I disappeared. I pulled up, got out, and felt a chill crawl into my shirt like fingers down my spine. The unit door looked the same. Number 409, scratched up, dented, rust blooming near the handle. But something felt off. There was dirt beneath the door. Fresh, like someone had dug underneath it recently and tried to pat it back down in a rush. I unlocked it, raised the rattling door, and stood still for a full minute. Inside, it wasn't what I remembered. I expected boxes, old clothes, maybe my comic book collection. What I found was something else entirely. A chair. Not just any chair. My chair. The one from my office at home. The leather cracked, the cushion worn down in the middle where I used to sit during all-nighters. It was placed dead center in the unit, under a single hanging bulb I never installed. Next to it was a small desk, and on that desk, a series of printed photographs. All of me. Some sleeping, some walking down the street, unaware, some standing at the kitchen sink, drinking from a mug. But none of them had been taken from inside my house. Every angle was wrong. Off-center, too high or too low, as if they'd been taken from corners that didn't exist. One photo in particular made my throat close. It was me, standing in the hallway of the cabin. Yesterday. Same clothes. Same expression. Only, there was no camera there. No one had been with me. Pinned to that photo was a sticky note. For words, written in the same jagged hand from the napkin under my pillow. He never really left. My hands were shaking so badly I had to sit down in the chair. I didn't even realize what I'd done until I heard it. A soft click underneath the cushion. I stood up, reached beneath, and pulled out a small tape recorder. It had already been playing. I rewound it and pressed play again. My voice came through first. Faint. Breathy. I don't think this place is mine anymore. Then another voice. Male. Calm. I'd never heard it so clearly before. Chill. He'll hear you. You're not supposed to wake up yet. The tape ended with static, and the sound of a second voice laughing. My own. I didn't drive home right away. I sat in that storage unit for what felt like hours, not moving, not breathing right, just letting that tape play on a loop in my mind. My voice. Then his. Then my laugh, but not my laugh. It had my vocal cords, sure, but not my soul. There was no weight behind it. Just hollow mimicry, like something was wearing my skin from the inside out. Eventually, when the light started shifting and the air grew stale, I got up, packed everything into an old box I found in the corner, and drove back to the cabin. I didn't even realize my hands were bleeding from gripping the steering wheel too tight until I walked inside and left smudges on the doorframe. The mirrors were still covered. I didn't dare look, but I needed answers. So I did the thing I had avoided all year. I opened the laptop. I connected to the old home network I swore I'd never touch again. And somehow, despite it being disconnected for over 300 days, it greeted me like I'd never left. No password reset. No login issues. Just, welcome Lowell. Except that wasn't the name I had saved the profile under before. I had called it L. Just the letter. Always minimal. Always private. But now the profile said, Lowell D. Number 2. My heart almost stopped. I opened the files. Inside the documents folder were hundreds of recordings. Surveillance footage. Audio logs. Memos. And one file titled simply, Finalization. I clicked it. A video loaded. It showed the interior of my house, the one Mallory and I used to share, lit in dim orange lamplight. The angle was from the hallway, looking directly into the living room. Mallory sat on the couch, talking to someone I couldn't see, voice trembling. I thought he wouldn't notice, she said, her fingers clutching a wine glass like it was an anchor. But he did. He noticed everything. The little differences. The smells. The way you cut toast. He wasn't supposed to come back so soon. Then the camera angle shifted, jerky, as if the device had moved. It now showed the reflection in the hallway mirror. Me, standing behind her, smiling. Except I remembered that night. I remembered being at a motel in another state, drunk on cheap gin, crying in the bathtub with the water running so the guests in the next room wouldn't hear. So if I was there, who the hell was in the mirror? The video ended with Mallory whispering, he's going to find the storage unit. And when he does, you'll know what to do. And then, static. I slammed the laptop shut and threw it across the room. It didn't break. It didn't even make a dent in the wall. But I needed it to be away from me. My chest was tight. I was shaking again. I went to the bathroom to splash water on my face. And then I did the one thing I promised myself I wouldn't do. I peeled the towel off the bathroom mirror. It was me. Red eyes. Wet skin. Pale. But then, the reflection blinked a full second after I did. And slowly, very slowly, raised its hand. I didn't. It waved. Then placed a single finger to its lips. Shoo. I stumbled back, tripped over the rug, slammed into the doorframe, and everything went black. And when I woke up, I was in my old house. In my old bed, wearing clothes I hadn't owned in a year. And Mallory was humming in the kitchen like nothing had ever happened. I lay there for a long time, not daring to move. The sun was rising through the curtains, casting that soft, familiar orange glow across the bedroom, the exact way it used to before I vanished. I half expected everything to shatter the moment I blinked, like one of those dreams where you know you're dreaming, but you don't want to wake up because this version of reality is somehow gentler than the truth. But the sheets were warm. The air smelled like cinnamon and coffee. And Mallory, she was really there, humming the tune she always hummed when she felt safe. When we felt safe, I stood slowly, expecting dizziness, fear, maybe even some hidden force dragging me back down, but none came. Just stillness. Quiet. I walked to the kitchen. She turned when she saw me. Her face didn't flash guilt or fear or pain this time. Only relief. She dropped the mug she was holding and ran to me like it was the first day of our honeymoon. threw her arms around me so tightly I thought my ribs would crack. And I didn't push her away. I didn't speak. I just held her. And for the first time in what felt like centuries, I belonged. Later that day, we sat outside in the backyard, drinking coffee from mismatched mugs, watching the trees sway in a soft breeze. I asked her about everything. The box, the mirror, the recordings. She was quiet for a long time, then finally said something I never expected. I don't know what it was, Lowell. Everett, the voice on the tape, the fake you, none of it made sense. But I think, somehow, you were pulled into a life that wasn't entirely your own. Maybe grief made space for it. Or pain. Maybe when we laughed that night at the barbecue, it opened a door we didn't understand. I thought about that. A door. Something entered. Something left. But not permanently. You came back, she said, reaching for my hand. That's all that matters. I didn't respond right away. I was still looking at the trees. Still waiting for the world to crack. Still wondering if the mirror version of me was watching from somewhere else, amused. But I realized something that gave me peace. He might have stayed behind. He might have tried to be me. But I was the one who remembered. I was the one who hurt. I was the one who loved. And whatever version of me had laughed with Tasha, and whispered in mirrors, and left notes in my handwriting. He never truly understood who Mallory was. He never understood why I left. But I did. And now, somehow, I'd come back to the version of reality where I was allowed to heal. That night, I made dinner. Just like old times. Spaghetti with too much garlic and the wrong wine pairing. Mallory made fun of me for burning the bread. We laughed. And this time, finally, it wasn't cruel.